How's it going, everyone? Hello and welcome to the Courageour Frights, the channel where we talk about movies and games, especially those dealing with the sci-fi, action, and horror genres. It's been about a week since Gamera made his triumphant return in the form of a brand new anime on Netflix titled Gamera Rebirth. If you haven't already seen that series yet, I strongly suggest checking it out, especially if you're a fan of Kadokawa's fire-breathing turtle kaiju, and be sure to check out my non-spoiler review of the series right here on this channel. While many kaiju fans will likely be aware of the Gamera Rebirth anime, I'm willing to bet that the prequel manga, Gamera Rebirth Code Thyrsos, will be less familiar to many of you. Beginning on September 8th, an ongoing manga began being uploaded online that tells the story of the creation of the kaiju scene in the anime. Those familiar with the Gamera franchise will know that Gamera is typically connected to an ancient, lost continent such as Atlantis or Mu, and Gamera Rebirth is no exception. However, in the past we usually only got mentions and the occasional passing glimpse at what this place may have looked like, despite its pivotal role in the development of the monsters seen throughout most of the series. If you ever wanted to find out more about this lost civilization, then you might just be in luck, because so far the entirety of Code Thyrsos has taken place in the far-off distant past of 100,000 BCE, on the very landmass that invented Gamera and all of his adversaries in the series. Also, as a quick side note, in case anyone's wondering what the title means, a Thyrsos is a type of staff or wand typically made of fennel topped with a pine cone that is usually associated with the Greco-Roman god of wine, Dionysus, or Bacchus, who is gaining a resurgence of popularity recently due to a popular K-pop song from BTS. Historically, it was believed to be a symbol of fertility and prosperity, though why this manga is called this isn't entirely clear just yet. So anyway, without further ado, let's dive into the story and find out what Gamera Rebirth Code Thyrsos is all about. In Chapter 1, we follow Lucius, a boy who lives in the ancient land of Elistania, presumably a nation-state within the continent of Mu, which had achieved a peak level of prosperity, but after the population reached unsustainable levels, this utopian society was shattered by 250 years of constant warfare and brutal famine. This is interesting, as to my knowledge, we have never really seen the ancient culture that created Gamera, especially not to this extent. And if the map shown in Gamera Rebirth is to be believed, then this continent once stretched across most of the Pacific Ocean, so it stands to reason that such a landmass would be home to numerous societies as well as its own unique ecosystem. Lucius' father is drafted into the war, and before leaving shows him a protective charm shaped like an ornate dagger or sword that he plans to give him when he grows up. Unfortunately, his father never returned home after that fateful day, leaving Lucius wondering what really happened to him and the charm. The family was informed that his father died heroically in battle, but left nothing behind but a blood-stained uniform. Then a year after that, Lucius's mother died from overwork, and shortly after, Lucius and his younger sister Seika began working at their uncle Aldol's meat processing plant. The plant was built to help combat against the famine, but the meat is of an unknown source, at least to the workers. One day after Seika broke a knife, which was apparently her fifth that week, which tells me that perhaps Elistania's metallurgy isn't of the highest quality during this period. Although, in the Heisei Gamera series, we're told that the Magatama used by Asagi to communicate with Gamera is made of orichalcum, a previously unknown metal that might as well have been glass given how fragile they appeared in that trilogy. Lucius gives Seika his knife and reluctantly goes off into the facility to inspect the meat in the conveyor belt for shards from the broken blade when he overhears people talking in a restricted area of the plant. It turns out to be Lucius's uncle Aldol, as well as some statesmen and a group of soldiers from a rival nation known as Imutania. The Imutanian soldiers, equipped with weapons not unlike armies of today, or perhaps a near-future sci-fi like Blade Runner or Alien, were told that they would be fighting a battle here at the plant that was designated as an underground redevelopment area. However, the soldiers are shocked to find that their opponent is not soldiers from a rival country, but instead a giant monster of some sort. One of the soldiers recognizes that his commanding officer is standing next to Kikurus, a high-ranking nobleman of the House of Teta, apparently a powerful family in Elistania. We discover that instead of fighting battles in the traditional sense, the nations of this continent have begun fighting what they refer to as proxy wars, in which soldiers from one nation are pitted against a monster from another. The outcome of said battles will decide whatever territorial disputes the nations are squabbling over. We discover that Elistania is creating genetically modified creatures to help feed their people, which is what the mystery meat at the processing facility is, and that these creatures, which are developed at Laptis, the Teta family's genetic research institute, Institute are serving double duty as champions designated to fight their battles as well. The resulting skirmish will be used to test the battle prowess of Laptis's creations to improve their quality in future engagements. The battle which ensues is quick and decisive, with the Imutanian forces being wiped out by Elistania's quadrupedal monster, ensuring that the railway rights, which was the prize for this conflict, are turned over to Elistania. The commander of Imutania says that next time they will be bringing their new model, implying that they also have kaiju research programs, and that eventually the soldier element of the exercise may be eliminated entirely. The kaiju begins to rampage within the facility as Seika wanders into the room looking for Lucius. She's immediately targeted by it, which takes a swipe at her with its razor-sharp claws. Lucius dives in, knocking Seika out of the way. However, he is badly injured when a pipe explodes, sending shrapnel into his eye, burning the right side of his face. The Elistanian researchers kill the kaiju using an embedded kill switch, preventing further damage within the facility. Lucius tells Seika that despite his injuries, they need to leave now to prevent getting caught, but before he leaves, he sees Kikurus take a valuable medallion off of one of the dead soldiers, calling it a trophy of the battle. As his assistant opens a briefcase full of trophies, Lucius sees his father's dagger charm among the loot. Lucius and Seika collapse in a nearby corridor as their uncle Aldol finds them, asking if he's still alive. When interrogated by Lucius, Aldol admits that he knew everything about his father's death and that this facility had only been used a few times for these proxy wars, which means there are likely numerous arenas in various countries that are used on some sort of rotation cycle. Aldol decides to show the teenagers the secret laboratory that is housed within the processing facility and tells them that one day their kaiju research will be used to end the nobles and their rotten society. Aldol brings Lucius into the research facility and asks one of the staff to tend to his wounds. He lets him know that the research facilities in Elistania are not as fancy as those used by their adversaries, which tells us that other groups probably have more advanced kaiju, and perhaps the reason why Imutania brought soldiers this time was that they underestimated the fighting prowess of Elistania's kaiju. We also learned that there are likely more nations fighting in the war than just these two. Aldol tells Lucius he should become a researcher and aid them in their quest to win the war against the nobility. We see that there's a large rat creature in a stasis pod here. This could be a reference to a couple of things, such as the low level of their kaiju research, so it would make sense that they would begin with a rat, since it's probably the most commonly used animal in test trials even today, as well as a potential nod to giant horde beast Nezura, which kaiju fans might know was Daiei's planned kaiju film before Gamera that dealt with a plot concerning giant mutant rats. This was unfortunately scrapped due to a rocky production involving the parasite-ridden sewer rats used for the film and complaints from the town that the studio was located in. Anyone interested in finding out more about that debacle might be interested in checking out a film called Nezura 1964 that dramatized the events surrounding that infamous production, which stars Yukijiro Hotaru as the president of Daiei, who of course also played fan-favorite character of Inspector Osako in the Heisei Gamera trilogy. Also of interest, the design of the mammoth Nezura of that film also bears more than a passing resemblance to some of the features seen in Gamera Rebirth's redesign of Jiger. So we fast forward 10 years and learn that Lucius, now an adult sporting a face patch and wearing elaborate robes, has continued his research as he tells the reader that he has learned many things, including the wars are a ploy for the nobles to raise money, and that they control all of the country's politics. And chapter 1 ends with him seemingly determined to bring the entire society to an end. I enjoyed this first chapter a lot. I've always been fascinated by the idea of lost civilizations mentioned throughout the Gamera franchise, and while this might not resemble the intentions of the Showa or Heisei filmmakers, it's cool to see a version of that story finally come to life in any format. Also, as a massive fan of the Resident Evil or Biohazard video game series, the plot of soldiers being sent into battle against bioengineered monsters to gather data to help researchers improve upon their bioweapons is extremely similar to the plots of many of those games, especially the early entries in the series. Speaking of, the monster that battles against the soldiers here bears more than a passing resemblance to Nemesis Stage 2, especially in the Resident Evil 3 remake. And a quick line one of the soldiers says about aiming for its eyes may or may not be another potential RE reference, as the eyes are usually the weak point for many of the bosses in that franchise. I'm definitely looking forward to see what happens next in this series, and will try to bring you coverage of it as soon as I can. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more Gamera content in the future. Hope you have a safe and fantastic day, and as always, thanks for watching.